really good question. I think everybody that we've spoken to already is people that we want to speak to anyway. But probably Grace and Perry would be pretty good, I think.
Guess would be Zoe Robertson, who makes sort of large-scale sculptural jewellery and works a lot with movement as well. She's based in England, and then locally Lotus DeWitt, who makes the most incredible small-scale sculptures out of metal.
Cheeky question, I love it. I think everybody that we've spoken to brings something very different to each episode, so I keep saying every time, this is my favourite episode, but they're all my favourite. I can't choose.
So while we've loved all of our guests, obviously, Helen Hancock I think was probably my favourite to interview, just because Gemma and I didn't know her, and I love glass as a medium, so everything was absolutely brand new information to us.
A really, really dirty chocolate brownie. There's a great Jamie Oliver recipe. It's amazing, but I substitute a lot out of it, so is it really even his recipe anymore at this point? I like pecans, white chocolate chips. No, I don't like white chocolate chips. I like white chocolate chunks, milk chocolate chunks, dark chocolate chunks. It's a very dark chocolate batter. I barely even cook it as well. Oh, but it's so good.
So favourite dessert, I've been vegan for 4 or 5 years, so I haven't had them recently, but chocolate profiteroles are the best. So if anyone knows a vegan version, hit me up. Vegan wise, anything that Gemma makes is delish. So this will come up in a later question, but Gemma and I used to work together in Spacecraft, which is now Craft and Eye Gallery, and we were meeting so many incredible and talented makers and hearing their stories, which we find really beneficial. So we just wanted to share that information with other people, because it's how you kind of build your business, and I think starting a community of makers and getting to know people and meet people that you probably wouldn't meet on an everyday basis and talk to them in quite a real and open and honest way, I think is just really interesting, and it's how we can kind of help and support each other. So hopefully as listeners you agree. But I love doing it, and it's always lovely to talk to Gemma and wonderful people.
So Robyn answered this one pretty well. When we were both working in a local gallery, we were just meeting loads of local makers, and we were each having maybe conversations with them as they were delivering things, and we just thought, wow, yeah, other people need to hear this. You know, this could be really beneficial to other makers, but also to just the general public, because, you know, maybe they just don't have access to listening to them speaking. They have all such fascinating stories, so it's great to be able to share that. Little study rings from Naomi of Simply and Dutch Jewellery. Absolutely gorgeous. Bought them for myself and for some Christmas presents. And I also have done a lot of self-gifting lately, so I also recently got a ring, a Superwoman ring from Tanya Ireland. Can't wait for that. That's going to be amazing.
The piece of locally made craft I bought was 10 days ago. It was 7 handmade face masks. They're all organic, and they are for my workshop participants, and you can get them on Etsy from Organic Face Coverings.
When that question was asked, the next episode is Babs Belshaw, whose episode was released today. It's brilliant, really good. Go and listen to it right now. Oh, we'll finish this first and then go and listen to it. But the next episode is Anne Earls Boylan. She's a jewellery artist and she's fantastic. She's also a lecturer at Ulster University, so I can't wait to speak to her. She'll be really fascinating. And then after that is Adam Furry.
So the podcasts don't come out in the order that we record them, just so we don't have 3 ceramicists in a row and 7 jewellers. So the next person who I think will be released is Anne Boylan's episode. She's an amazing jeweller and works at the University of Ulster.
Just finished watching Mad Men. It was really good. We missed it the first time around, and the last film watched, actually, me and my husband have been watching the Oceans movies. So we watched Oceans 12 there. Yeah, really, really cheesy, but just a really easy watch.
I've rediscovered a program that I loved ages ago that I didn't manage to watch in order, so I'm going back now that I found them somewhere else, and they have all of them and I'm binging them at the minute, and it is Cougar Town. It's really funny. It's on Amazon Prime and I really recommend it. Recorded this so many times because there's no really good way to say that you listen to the news, but I listen to newscast at the start of the day, whenever it's released basically, and it's quite good information.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of craft podcasts, but although actually I haven't been listening to many craft podcasts lately because it feels a bit like homework, or it just reminds me that I have a lot of stuff to edit for our own podcast. So I've been listening to some more light-hearted podcasts like Off Menu with Ed Gamble and James Acaster. Really good. It makes me really hungry. And I also was listening to All Killa No Filla with Kerry Pritchard McLean and Rachel Fairburn. Absolutely brilliant. Really, really good. It's all about serial killers, so it's a bit sick. But it's done in a really good way. It's quite respectful. Yeah, really love it. Recommend it. It's great.
There is not enough time to tell you everything that I love about working with Jemma. She is just so incredibly creative. Some of the ideas she comes up with are just inspirational. She keeps me going, and she's kind of, both of us kind of miss that university dynamic where you can kind of chat to other people and bounce ideas off each other. And while Jemma and I didn't study together, we did, we sort of, I don't know, I sort of feel like Jemma's my sister, and it's really just lovely to be working with her and doing amazing projects that she generally comes up with. So if I do anything great, it's probably because of Jemma.
Great, but it's not to love. I'm working with my friend, and it's a very time-consuming thing to be doing a podcast. It's probably a full-time job, and neither of us are doing the podcast full-time, so sorry. But I do all the editing for all the episodes, and I feel like there's some episodes where I'm more confident in some than others, and whenever I'm not confident, that's whenever Robyn really steps up, and she just takes control, or she calms me down, and she's just a phenomenal person. She's great to work with because she has ethics at the forefront of her own business, and she's absolutely killing it as well. So she's so inspiring. She's great.
So we applied for the Artist Emergency Fund, and I think we were granted it because, one, Jemma is an epic grant writer, but also because the project is in this sort of weird climate that we're in at the minute. It's accessible online, so it's accessible to everybody, so it's not reliant on galleries or spaces being open and people being able to move freely. You can access it from home, and it's a good way to kind of show different makers and creators and creative businesses and maybe how they've sort of survived during this time as well, so people maybe don't feel so alone.
So last year we launched our first series. It was 5 episodes with a bonus episode about the Ulster University degree show, and this year we wanted to have more of a focus on retailers and local independent businesses, but COVID hit and we couldn't really operate like that, and we saw that the Arts Council of Northern Ireland had their Artist Emergency Programme come up for funding, and they were specifically looking for digital projects, and we thought, yep, that totally fits us, no problem. And we also were really committed that during this time especially, we wanted to make sure that any participants were going to get paid for their work to contribute to the podcast, because we couldn't physically go to their studios to bribe them with food. Some very terrible work. And I think the worst was straight after I graduated, I had signed up for a craft fair around the Christmas time. I didn't even have a kiln. I certainly didn't have any retail range. So I decided I was going to make some spoons, but the handle was going to be like an antler, and they were awful. They didn't even get fired, thankfully. So terrible.
So I'm not the most confident of people, so naturally I would kind of gravitate towards quite a lot of things to choose from. There was one piece that I did make that I actually really liked, but it really stank and therefore was the worst thing to hold on to after it was in exhibition, and it was a piece called Catch. Was it called Catch of the Day or something? I don't know. Basically, I had made a sardine can in, like, it was a giant sculptural necklace, and it was a sardine can that was actually used as a catch for the back of this neck piece that had all of these big jewels that were kind of strapped together, and it stank. So that's definitely my worst. So after the first series, we had considered trying to do each series covering a different aspect of the craft community. So the second series was meant to be shops and asking, going into shops and asking shop owners who sell local craft, what do they wish makers knew, and things that to kind of open that conversation between makers and gallerists. Certainly an episode on privilege would be amazing. Trying to figure out how to work it into a series, or if we could make a full series of it, would be great. I'm not entirely sure what format it would be, but I would certainly be open-minded to it, definitely. Whoever messaged that question, tell me more. Yeah, I'd love to see how you envisaged it, and we'll see if we can make it happen.
Really deep and serious question that I feel like it's really hard to answer. I mean, I feel like you could probably have a whole podcast just on that subject alone. But there definitely is an awful lot of privilege within craft, especially within the first world. So yeah, I would love to touch on it on each episode if possible. It would be really interesting.
Will we interview each other? We've talked about it. I think it would be quite interesting, but ultimately the podcast was never, meant to be about us. It was meant to be about the people that we're interviewing. I think it would be a good idea because I like to know, whenever I listen to a podcast, especially if it's an interview based one, I do like to know information about the people who are interviewing to kind of understand what their approach is and why they're asking the questions that they ask. So from that perspective, I think it could be quite interesting. I think this Q&A is probably our happy medium because neither Gemma or I are super comfortable with being interviewed. We're kind of like, we prefer to be behind the mic asking the questions. But I know a good bit of Gemma's background, and I think she would be amazing to hear from. And I've got quite a lot of random stories that could hopefully make people understand why I ask so many weird questions.
I kind of feel like I share so much anyway throughout all the episodes that probably if you pasted them all together, it would just be like a giant Jemma Millen ceramics episode. So sorry about that, but I am totally all up for a Robyn episode. That's fine.
My favourite thing about Gemma is her, as a person, is her constant creativity and optimism and enthusiasm for what she does. As a maker, in what she makes, I love her attention to detail. She will frequently contact me or we'll be chatting to each other, and she'll be like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure, this isn't quite perfect, and I cannot see the imperfection she's talking about. She is just a wonderful human being, and I'm very glad to do these projects with her. And yes, go buy her work. It's great. I've got quite a few pieces now that I have purchased, even though Gemma got kind of annoyed with me that I did purchase it. So I have to make up false names now whenever I go on Etsy, but she's great. She's a great crack, lovely person, and I could not imagine anyone better to do a podcast with.
My favourite thing about Robyn is that she forces me to slow down whether I want to or not. We are very different people, but with the same passions and the same interests, and I think that makes quite a really nice contrast in the episodes. The way she approaches questions is just so out of the box and so unusual, and that's why I really love doing this project with her, because she brings something completely different. She has a very different way of thinking, and I find that very valuable.